Alrighty, number 26 here. Busy week or two in the cross-country mountain bike world. We got the World Cup number 1 already in the books. Number 2 about to happen starting tomorrow, although the short track for the under 23, I believe, was today. I don't know the results, if that's even happened. It's not publicized on any of the video platforms. But they got the Sea Otter Classic, which is always one of my favorite events just because of all the new stuff released. I actually was supposed to go there this year for the first time. It's one of those bucket list things I've always wanted to attend, just for all the product releases and to see all the different people. And I had my media credentials all lined up and just could not pull it off due to work issues and other things that I could not do it. So I'm going to try again next year. But in the meantime, there's quite a bit to talk about. And at the end, I will briefly discuss what I have planned for something brand new with a fellow cross-country and mountain biking nutball. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Here we go.
This is Short Travel Magazine.
Short Travel Magazine.
Changing gears. More new stuff we don't really need.
In honor of Sea Otter this week, I think we should start with some new gear releases. There's plenty. A lot. Not just because of Sea Otter, but the first thing I'd like to talk about is the new cross-country and kind of low tread height, if you will, tires that have come out all of a sudden. 4 different tire announcements have happened this week, and they're all kind of interesting. First, I'd like to talk about what Trek is doing with their Bontrager tires, which of course they're getting rid of the Bontrager name for some reason, and they're using the RSL name for all of their kind of higher end race products, which I guess that makes sense. They've been using it for a little while. Why not the tires? Of course, this first came to light earlier last year, even when they were showing some of the new Valnord tires on the new 2024 Super Calibers. Nobody really knew what was going on because they use Pirelli tires, of course, for the race team, which again, I find odd. You're pushing your own tires, which personally, they're my favorite tires because I was able to kind of grasp and understand their naming system. You know, XR0, which they haven't made in a few years, was practically bald. XR1 was their super fast, kind of gravelly looking tire. XR2 was a little more knobby. XR3 a little more knobby. XR4 even more knobby. So you just kind of go 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I usually put XR1s on for my everyday kind of gravel bike path riding that I mainly do. And then race day, I would put some XR2s or the 3s on so I could get some more traction. And it was very simple. Of course, that's all gone. They've now gone with their new naming system, which in theory, I guess I get. It's named after the venue that you would, the race venue, World Cup venue that you would typically use the tires. For example, they have a Gunnison tire, which is supposed to be pretty heavy duty. I'm assuming, right? Gunnison, Colorado. It's a little rocky. Having never ridden there, I'm assuming this based on the tread. A little more heavy duty tire. And then you have your Valnord, which is the equivalent, I guess, of the XR1. It's the low knob, bunch of tiny little knobs. And then you go up to the, what's the next one? The Mont Saint Anne, which is kind of a little more mid-range. And what's their final one? I forget. A Montrose, which is kind of a much bigger knobbed. I would call it like a down country kind of a, I could see that working well in the Southwest environments where there's more rocks and things. Uh, Interesting. They have two levels of most of them. They have your RSL, which is, your super light. And then you have your Pro version, which is not as light, similar tread, same tread, different protection, blah, blah, blah. The interesting thing is the prices. The Pros are $50 and the RSLs are 70, and that's, street retail at a Trek dealer, which to me nowadays seems like a bargain, because I don't know if you've priced some of these cross-country race tires. They're easily approaching $100 for some of them, 80 to $100 easily. And you have to, of course, mail order them somewhere, because no shop is going to have a lot of these things. So that's kind of interesting. And they're 2.40 options. That seems to be the new go-to, even though rumor has it they are going to release 2.2 versions or 2.25, which is kind of more where I'm at. I have an older bike. It doesn't really, the rear certainly does not support the wider 2.4 very well. So that's interesting. Those I'll probably start. I just actually picked up some of the XR1s, a set of them about 2 weeks ago, because they are on sale for $55. So I now have 2 or 3 of each XR1s, 2s, and 3s. So I'm good for a year or two. But come next year, I guess I'll have to be switching that up. Hutchinson, of course. Remember Hutchinson? You don't hear about them that much anymore. They were big in the 90s. I know I dabbled with a few Hutchinson tires. They're French. They've got a new Python. Python was always their kind of cross-country tire. And their tire looks, it's a gravel tire by all, practical purposes. It's 2.4. They're very light, 600 grams for a 2.4, 127 TPI casing. So very interesting. They're also doing the split thing where the outer tread is softer than the inner tread, the middle tread. So they've got practically no knobs on them down the middle. Very similar design to most everybody. Now the Python 3, the regular, not the race, the 3 is the one that I would guess most people would use, on regular mountain bike trails. So it's kind of interesting that Hutchinson is kind of back in the game. Now they've sponsored, plenty of European racers. I don't think they're doing much in the U.S. So then Vittoria gets in on the game. They got a new Peyote and Mezcal tires. And their Peyote, is that how you say it? Are actually do not look like anything. They're very low tread, of course. That's the thing. Very low. We're talking like a millimeter or two worth of tread. But they've got a very, very different design. It's got some long V-shaped things. Kind of strange, to be honest with you. Doesn't mean they're not great. They look like nobody else's cross-country race tire. And the Mezcals, which are very popular around here, it looks about the same. They just have new widths, 2.25 and 2.4, and they've never been particularly light. They're 750 to 800 grams. They've, tires have just obviously gone up and up and up in weight. 600 grams was like a decent kind of cross-country race tire. Low, 650. Now it's easily 750 to 800 is the norm. So what are you going to do? And then even Maxxis finally released the Aspen ST, the tire that Nino's been using and a lot of racers have been using. And that thing has, it literally looks like it has no traction. And a 170 TPI casing, which, they keep talking about how pliant it is and all that. Maybe, who knows? It's 60 grams less, so you're talking around 685 for a full 2.4 tire. But, there it's around $100, I believe. I'm trying to do the conversion of euros to dollars, so I believe that's over $100 for the tire. So they're even saying race day only, very little puncture protection and all that. So all at once, there's all new race tires. Which there's one more that I don't quite get. Terravale tires, which you kind of hear a little bit about. I hear about them in the fat bike world because they've got a few decent fat bike tires. I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they're the tires owned by Quality Bike Products, the big distributor who owns Salsa and 45 North and about 80 other brands that you don't even realize. That's their kind of house brand. And they released a tire. They're calling it the ideal tire for modern XC trails, and maybe, but they have got gigantic knobs. They're called the A-Line, EHLINE, 65 to 75 bucks. 2.3 and 2.5, so they're kind of skipping the old 2.4. 2.3 might actually be a nice in between, but they've got, to me, gigantic knobs, so they're calling this the kind of the ultimate cross-country tire, and I guess nowadays you could call it the cross-country tire. So that's 5 new tire releases, companies, cross-country tires all at once. I can't say I've ever quite seen that all happen. I have to assume this is all Olympic related. The year of Olympics seems to be crazy for releases. Let's move on from rubber to something a little more stiff. How about the new Fox 32 Stepcast fork that came out? Of course, they have all new dampers, which they've got 3 different ones, and between you and me, I have no idea what the difference between all of these dampers really is. I can't believe a whole lot of people have any clue which one of these is best, if at all. I mean, put any old damper in my fork. I don't give a crap, I'll be quite honest. I have no idea why you'd want to switch out all these dampers. The thing that caught my eye is the 32 step cast with the 100 mil travel, as of course the rear arch that they've been teasing for a year, I believe. There's been some sneak photos. The rear arch actually did not, in the prototypes that I saw, did not look anything like the one that actually is released. Now, this is a weird fork. It's very light. I mean, the thing was already light. I believe it's another, I think it's 1,200 and something grams, 1,250? 1,280 grams. Yep, 1,287 grams. I mean, that is bonkers light for a cross-country fork. You have to remember a lot of the gravel forks right now, the RockShox Explorer, they're all 1,300 plus grams around. So they're actually heavier. They only have 30 or 40 millimeters of travel. This has a full 100 and a full size stanchions and everything. So that's pretty amazing. The confusing part, of course, is that it's 100 mil only, and you can't get a 120 or a 110. It definitely seems like this thing is a little late to the party. Like if this would have came out a few years ago at 100 mil travel, people would probably go crazy. But all the 34 Fox fork stepcast, if you actually look at the World Cup last week, and there were many of these, you know, they're gold. The whole fork is gold, which to me looks beautiful. Way better than the orange. It's orange or black, and now you get black with gold decals or all gold. And I really like the gold finish. I think that's classy and it kind of blends in better. But they're showing the new Pinarello Dogma and Hardtail today. Those were released, the ones that Pidcock and PFP are using for their race bikes. And they're putting the 32 on both. They're saying, you know, this is the perfect fork for their hardtail, which kind of makes sense. I can get 100 mil on a hardtail cross-country bike, although I see virtually zero of those around. But they're putting it on their full suspension bike. I believe that has 90 mil travel in the back. So interesting what Pinarello is doing. They're saying Pidcock and Pauline kind of dictated how these things were built. But I'm guessing since they use Sun Tour forks to race, that the fork issue was not something they had any input on. But anyway, all the racers at the World Cup had the regular old 34 forks that apparently are just graphically different with the other dampers dropped in. So that's kind of cool. I really like if they could up that to like a 110 and a 120 with that reverse arch. I'd have to think they're going to. I mean, why would you develop all that, stick it on a 100 mil fork that I don't think very many people will buy when every cross-country bike is kind of starting to hit that 120. So that's interesting. What else? There's so much gear stuff coming out. Race Face has done a bunch of stuff under their Era product category, which started with the cranks. I guess that's replacing kind of their next. Are they keeping the next line of products? I don't know. I haven't kept up on the Race Face world that much, but they got the carbon cranks, which are kind of a new design, and now they have the bars, which the only thing interesting about Race Face carbon bars, because let's face it, carbon handlebars to me are all about the same. I pick out when I buy them, I look at the bend and the rise and the reach to try and match what I already have, and that's about all I really care about. And that they still come in the 31/6 clamp size, because that's what I have on all my bikes. And the Race Face the thing that I found interesting is they are coming in 3 different widths. They're not one giant width and then you cut it down, but 3 widths that you can further cut down a little bit to get just right. Now me, I'm like Nino and a lot of the cross-country racers. If you dig into their bikes, they're not running 800 mil bars. Some of them are, but most of them are still hovering around 700. In fact, I've seen a few that are in the 680s, I believe, below 700 mil wide. And the problem I had when I was cutting down my NVM, I think the M5, they're like 10 mil riser bars I put on my fat bike. I think they came at 780. Well, I had to chop them down to around 700. And they weren't really, the markings didn't go down to 700. I think they stopped at like 720. I chopped them anyway. I mean, I don't really care about stiffness and all that junk. So these new Race Face bars, they do have the 3 different widths that you then can further tweak. I guess it's unrealistic to have anybody make a 700 mil bar right out of the box. Although I did notice some of those super crazy European companies making carbon, $500 carbon bars. They will actually make you a proper custom width bar and have it all tapered just correctly so you don't have to cut it, and you get kind of the maximum amount of compliance out of them. That's cool. But the Race Face bars, I would purchase one, the smallest one, and then there's less cutting to do, and that's kind of cool. The other thing that came up is, of course, the Era chainring. Now, I've got a buddy, how you doing, Brian, if you're listening to this? He's down in Arizona. It's a good time as any to mention a little collaboration him and I are going to do, either purely as a video kind of a podcast thing or a true audio podcast between him and I, and then just show a few highlights on the YouTube channel. That whole YouTube channel is officially launching May 1st. I will have the first videos up on May 1st, and then they will start coming rapidly. I think you'll find a lot of different stuff on there. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to start posting all these things that hopefully people might find interesting. If not, I'll post them anyway. 1 viewer or 1,000, I don't really care. Anyway, Brian is in the southwest of the United States and has a quite different riding environment than I do here in Chicago, but he was kind enough to let me try one of the new Gemini Wriggle solid carbon direct mount chainrings. They came out a while ago. I was jonesing about them. I just love the look of the solid one piece. What's interesting about the Gemini chainring, of course, is that there is a aluminum skeleton kind of underneath the teeth area. So your chain is kind of riding on the aluminum, and then the carbon is kind of on top of it to give it that aluminum kind of wear properties. But the weight of the whole chainring is half the weight of a steel or heavier aluminum chainring. So that's cool. I'm going to put it on the bike this weekend and start trying it. So then Raceface comes out this week with the Era, and lo and behold, there's not 2 materials in this chainring, but 3. They got aluminum, carbon, and steel all in one chainring, which is kind of insane. And if you read their marketing text, the purpose is not weight, which is not a huge surprise, I don't think. Their purpose is longevity. So they're claiming up to 5 times of a life of this new Era chainring compared to a typical aluminum-only product, which is amazing. Now, the cost, of course, is quite a lot, but if you've priced the SRAM direct mount chainrings, the new transmission, or even the older SL styles, they were approaching $70 to $100 for a chainring. So when something like this Gemini comes out for a little over 100, and the Era, I don't know, 125, $150, and they really truly can get 5 times, and I don't necessarily doubt this. Their explanation of why seems very legit. It starts seeming a little more interesting. So the age of uber crazy chain rings are apparently upon us, because I guess there's some time in the engineering department to say, hey, let's take a simple aluminum chain ring and see how crazy we can go with it and see how much money we can charge for it. So that's the kind of Raceface Era product line is getting built out now. I'm assuming that's replacing the next. It's going to be their uber light, super high tech stuff. Lots of gear. This whole podcast may just be gear at this point. The other thing I found interesting is the new time pedal push that SRAM is doing. Now, SRAM purchased not all of Time, Time, of course, was a European brand, mainly in the road world. They had frames, and they were known for their road pedals. They have had off-road pedals, forever. I never actually knew anybody that had any, but, they were always kind of, had ads in the magazines. Kind of remind me of the whole Look had pedals, but I never actually see anybody using off-road pedals from Look. So anyway, Time was purchased, at least the pedal and some of the intellectual property, by SRAM a year or two ago, a couple of years. I think it was a full 2 years now. And I was wondering if they were ever going to start showing up on any of the team bikes, because, if you're a SRAM sponsored racer, you've already got the shocks, the fork, probably the brakes, the drivetrain, probably a seat post. You had pretty much everything else. Pedals just seem like a giant hole in their lineup. So when they bought Time, I thought, oh, that's interesting. I actually thought they may buy somebody more like HT or one of those Taiwan-based pedal companies that many, many, many of the World Cup racers use HT pedals. It must be because if they're SRAM sponsored, maybe they're not allowed to run Shimano pedals or vice versa. So many of them, I'd say the vast majority of non-XTR pedals were HT. But I did notice that Loana Lecomte, Evie Richards, I believe Schwartz Power, as I call them, had them too. A lot of the SRAM athletes now have Time pedals on this year. And they just released a press release saying, hey, we updated Time pedals. It's a lot of the road stuff, but they are pushing the new cross-country and gravel. I guess, nowadays it's kind of the same difference. But they have the new pedals. They're pushing I believe, what do they call the XC2? XC, yeah, 12, 10, and 6 is the line. 12 being the super cool carbon titanium option. 120 grams a pedal. That's 240 a set. That's quite a lot. That's a full 100 grams lighter than an XTR pedal, which is interesting because they don't look particularly light. They actually look kind of chunky. But since most of them is, let's be honest, it's plastic. They call it injected carbon fiber composite. I call it plastic. Titanium axle. So, they're expensive, $300 a pair, but you can get their heavier ones, which really are not that much heavier for $90. I think they're only 30 grams heavier. Yeah, 30 grams for the $90 pedals to the $300 pedals. That's still lighter than an XTR, and you're only paying $90. So, if you've ever seen time pedals, they have two huge kind of hooks on them, and I've never used them. They look cool. Who knows? I would not be surprised if suddenly kind of one of the requirements if you're going to be a SRAM athlete is you got to take our pedals. So maybe they are finally going to kind of move into the forefront. I would have to think they would. One thing I always kind of thought interesting for SRAM is they've bought a million companies, They've bought Avid Brakes, which they no longer use, of course, the name Avid. Who else did they buy? They bought Sachs, Sachs. That's the kind of was their chain. They also made freewheels. So they got rid of those names and they just call them. But the time pedals and what's the handlebar seat post? I'm drawing a blank. You don't see them on cross country bikes very often. Something with a D. I don't know. They kept that brand alive. And RockShox, of course, is still. So the fact that they're keeping their pedals labeled as time and not SRAM XC2 pedals, that's kind of interesting. What else? I'm out of breath. It's too much gear talk. Okay, I'll mention one more thing. Bonus. Muck Off. Everybody knows Muck Off makes the cleaners and all that stuff. They've had pressure washers. Now, I find them interesting because they're just, to me, they look like regular old pressure washer that you would buy, except they're pink, right? They're now pink, and now they're suddenly a mountain bike product. But that's not the interesting thing. They have a new bundle that's battery powered and has a container for water built into it. So this one is truly portable, and I think it was really cool of them. You have to check that out. It's fully battery powered. It's got the foam bottle for your soap, and two really interesting things. And when I buy this, I don't know. I don't have any use for portable water pressure. If my bike gets trashed, and it often does in the winter, I'd throw it on the rack and wash it when I get home. I got plenty of pressure washing capabilities at home. But not only does this have what looks to be maybe a 5-gallon tank that you pour water in, and again, it's all battery powered, but they've adjusted the pressure, the max pressure on this thing. They claim, I think it was 800 PSI. It's safe. You're not really going to blast out your bearings or do any damage to your paint or anything. It's just kind of the sweet spot of pressure. And that to me makes perfect sense. First of all, you wouldn't have to have as much battery to push out, 1,500 PSI on something. But they've got a kind of a container, a master bag, if you will, that houses not only the unit, but the wand and a matching extra 5, it looks like 5, maybe it's 7 or 10 gallon water jug that kind of goes in, and it all fits into one kind of carrying case. Looks waterproof on top of it with a handle. So you would take this whole system full of water and throw it in the back of your car, all fully enclosed. And then if you needed it, you'd pop this thing out, pop a couple pieces together, and you are cleaning your bike or your shoes or anything. So it really kind of thought, now that is a really cool bike specific product, and not just a pressure washer with pink logos on it and say now it's a bike product. The reason the pressure washers came up is Ego, who makes really high end battery powered lawnmowers and snow blowers, and weed whackers. I've got the whole line of it. They finally came out with a pressure washer with battery power, but I think it's approaching 2,900 psi, and there's no way in the world I'm pointing that at a bike. So this muck off thing, I think that's really cool. I did not check price. I'm sure it's not cheap. Nothing, for the bike world is ever cheap. So that's cool. That was a lot. What do we? Geez, we're already half hour here. So a couple quick racing things, and then we're going to wrap this up. And again, I'll talk a little bit at the end here about what phase 2 of Short Travel Magazine is going to be like. And I'm kind of excited. All right, let's do some racing news really quick.
Racing news and views.
What can I say about racing other than the USA is back? USA is back, baby. We've been kind of eking out a win or a podium here and there the last few years, thanks to Blevins, and of course Kate Courtney kind of started this whole thing back in, what was that, 2019 or 16? Jesus, it's been a while. With her world champ win. But to say the first World Cup in Brazil did not go well for U.S. racers, I think would be an understatement, in my opinion. They have done what I wasn't quite sure if it was even going to be possible, to kind of rule the whole race, if you will. I mean, they kind of ruled it from the 23, under 23. Let's just look at some top 5 performances. Madigan Monroe, under 23, 4th place. Emily Johnston, shout out from Canada. That's North America. That's cool too. She got 3rd. Of course, the men under 23. The 2 Rileys killed it. Amos Riley, 1st place. Riley Bjorn, 2nd place, right? So under 23, podiums on both, winning the men's race and second. I mean, that's really cool. Women, men. Blevins. Did anybody watch? I highly recommend you watch the last lap of this race in Maripora, because Blevins was on fire. He was always up there. He was in that top group. This is classic race strategy, and I was so happy to see him kind of keep his cool. He did this at Snowshoe when he won. He was just playing it cool. He was up there following the leaders, did not go crazy, try and take a flyer, 2 laps out. He just sat there, and man, it was just like a flashback. You could see he had that little extra something in his eyes and in his the way he was pedaling. And then at the very last second, when he saw his chance, he took off and he won that sucker. And that was a beautiful win. And if you watch any of his interviews, he even admitted he was not planning something like that. So maybe those are the sweetest ones, when you aren't thinking you're particularly in great chances of winning, and you actually win. And he beat Koretsky and Colombo and Saru. So I just was very happy. It was awesome watching him win. And kudos to Team Specialized for 1st, 2nd, and 5th. Two standard, kind of been around a while. And then, of course, Martin Vidare, 2nd year elite, finally kind of showing that he could do what he could do in the under 23, that he was great in under 23. So cool. That was cool. And then, of course, you get to the women. Now, that would have been enough, right? under 23s, first, second, and a fourth, great. Winning the men's, awesome. I mean, that's it. Wrap it up. That's a wrap. But to have Sevilla Blanc end up in second and Haley Batten in third, which probably should have been the other way around. Haley Batten probably would have ended up in second with Blanc in third. Doesn't matter. Second, third, second. Only Rizveds could beat those two ladies. So first, second, third, first, second, fourth. I mean, that's pretty darn cool. Now, that's not even the complete total. If you look at the women's elite, right, you got your second and third. You got Kelsey Urban in 8th place. Now, I don't know if you've been, she's kind of, she's on Rizved's team from the U.S., I believe from the West Coast, from California, if I'm not mistaken. And she's always been, in the 20s and 30s. I still like to follow her because she's a U.S. rider and trying to do the World Cups. But she was right up there and ended up in 8th place. Kate Courtney, who was actually, I believe she was even leading for a little while, kind of drifted, but still ended up in 10th. And if you look at her time difference, she was only, a minute, 2 minutes back. It's not one of those 5-6 minute back kind of a results where you go, she's not really close. So the women's race, you got second, third, 8th, and 10th. 4 women in the top 10 from the U.S. The only other nation with 2 people is Swiss, and that's Yolanda in 5th. Kudos to her, and Alessandra Keller. So the U.S. had four riders in the top 10. That's really pretty nutty. I don't know that that's ever really happened before. So in that regards, the first Brazil race was awesome. Not only that, the track, again, if you haven't watched it, it's a great, I know even if people say watching cross country is boring, I have to give Brazil credit. Their tracks are not boring. I just watched the one happening tomorrow. I don't even know how to say the word, Zaraxis or something. Please excuse me. I don't know how to say Araxa, I guess. Araxa, I don't know. That track looks insane. It doesn't even look like a cross-country course. So any of you people who are on the fence about watching some of these World Cup cross-country races, see if there's a way to watch at least the highlight show, which are on YouTube. Watch that after this weekend because it looks it looks fun. It looks terrifying for somebody like me with the jumps and these downhills, but I bet it's going to make for absolutely incredible video race to watch. So little tip, if you don't have Max in the U.S., you need the Max with the sports option to watch these live, but you can go on YouTube after the fact, and there are the races just with no commentary. That could be a plus or a minus depending what side of the fence you're on. I personally kind of really missed the commentary, so I paid up for the year. But they do have, they're making an effort this year. I'm going to leave the subject of what Warner Brothers Discovery is doing this year. They're getting a lot of crap about stuff, their videos and their races, and their cost money. But I think it's worthy of a discussion because I think they're doing a much, 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 much better job. And there's a couple reasons why most people aren't. I'm not even sure if they realize what else is happening with that platform for races. So I think we should just stop there. The next race, of course, televised ones are tomorrow, the short track, and then Sunday is the full XCO. I'll be extremely curious to see if any of the Americans that kicked butt last week can do it again. I see no reason why the Sevilla Blanc, and Haley Batten and Blevins and the Rileys, I see absolutely no reason why they couldn't be podium contenders again. But it's a funny thing, the cross-country world. It could be a completely different top 10, and these guys and ladies could be back in the 10 to 20 range again. Who knows? So I look forward to that. All right. One last little tidbit and then we'll go.
Interesting tidbits. Curated just for you.
All right. Video update. YouTube update. This is by saying it here in this podcast. Now I have to do it. May 1st is the official launch of the YouTube and full push of Short Travel Magazine. And it's going to involve regular, possibly multi-weekly videos, some long, some short, some reviews, some not, a little of everything. And I'm going to try and keep it low key and just have fun with it and try and make stuff interesting for people who like not only cross-country mountain biking, but even beyond that a little. I think you'll find some interesting things. And one component of it is, and I'm not sure how it's going to work, is that I'm going to do a little partnership with a dude named Brian. As I mentioned earlier, he's in the Southwest Arizona area and has a love for new equipment and gear, seemingly even more than I do, if that's possible. He's had or has a tremendous, nice variety of high-end stuff and just different things. And I find it more interesting that he rides in a completely different environment than I do. So his needs are a little different. He sees things a little different. And I think it could be an interesting conversation. I'm going to start with a format that will be kind of simple and hopefully entertaining in some way. So look for that. May 1st, again, I'm going to start. So for me, there's a first cross-country race of the year, the Wisconsin Off-Road Series, now owned and run by Trek. The first race is May 5th. I'm actually really looking forward to this. It's at the Trek headquarters. You ride on the Trek trails that they use for testing. These are private trails. They are not open to the public any other time of year. They've done this now twice. It's my favorite place to ride, I think, that I've ever ridden. No surprise. They've got, the best of the best for their own uses. And I'm even going to volunteer to help out and in exchange get a free race. So I'm going to have to leave my house at around 4:30 in the morning for a 2.5 to 3 hour drive, volunteer for a few hours, and then I'm going to do my little sport race and don't really care how I do. It's not what it's about anymore at my age. So it's going to be fun, but there'll be a lot of stuff going on. So that's how it's going to start, and then we'll go from there. All right, so that's it for this one. Talk to you soon. Go Team USA. Of course, go all the other teams. I don't hate any other teams. I just think it's cool that we have some top podium contenders now. So that's cool. All right, talk to you soon. Go riding as much as you can this weekend. Thanks.
Thank you ever so much for listening to Short Travel Magazine.